As we began in our short today, empowered people, they do not go around telling others how to be or who to be. And that's because the functional child adults, we are empowered to be our true selves authentically, and others can be their own authentic or fake. Pod self people, those are the ones who ignore going to a Patrick Tehan to reparent their inner child or to real to become functional adults. And with that, we do know here at HP, I do, thanks to Dr. Daniel Siegel, that personality is a filter through which our temperament deals with us as one nervous system, body, being here on Earth. And when we are in the state of awareness, because we can sift through sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, that's because with mindfulness, living, and loving practices, and you being able to apply that inner growth mindset, you're an open-hearted person. Differentiated self people are the ones who are securely attached, non-traumatized, so we're not telling people what to do with life. Okay, so in a time, there's a saying, who does for themselves does for three. Also, if you are a cockroach, your mother will love you. So there's different ways that you can accept being what is flawed and crooked, and knowing that God is always God and anybody else is not, and that the laws are the laws. And so when you have healthy self-worth and you have a funny bone, Krishna Lila, come on in. That's anchoring in ventral energy. Immunity isn't enough to be saluted is a biologically rude person who I don't need to do anything about it, and I had a good time, and I tell you the story all the time. And that's because he's an insecure person, not the other way around. And Terry Real has a very beautiful, unhealthy self-worth boundary place little grid, and all of people who don't know how to let others be their self could be put on it, and they're called martyrs, superiors, or blamers, the caretakers. And so in either or, when I meet codependent people, they like to give each other pats on the back, they like to yell at the group that they don't like and stuff like that. So they're not in awareness. While when we are in awareness, we become aware that who we really are is not the personality patterns, the temperament, or the modality. It's more than just that. Okay, so pure consciousness incarnate, and or just consciousness. It's an integrated brain. That's what you got right here. So restorative, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating people are able to be empowered. Other than that, we got facades that pretend to be empowered, and you can tell the difference if you are in our 5D collective of mystic, spiritual, mindful, living, loving people. We don't point it out to them. But what I can tell you is that they are the same ones who lack education, and that's a lot. And on that note, this episode is going to have an extended on the Spotify and audio podcast episodes alone, or episode on IHP. IHP on Spotify, Spotify for creators. So if you're not following us there and you're on YouTube, you can go. I don't know when I'll release it yet, but that's what I've just decided as I began and continue to finish this one up, because I thought of it. Okay. When you are a person who has attachment trauma education, you begin to look at all people as their 3-year-old and 8-year-old when they don't have healthy self-worth, which is why I don't even just look at them. I perceive their little child part walking away. And that's as an intuitive, but also as a person who has knowledge, thanks to taking the attachment trauma educational courses. So my teacher, Sue Martin, she's the one who explained. She says, we all have trauma, but it's trauma charges. They're not big trauma, but the child parts. They stay as icicles, preserved in that very essence of time, which is why, from my personal experiences, yes, I know when my child parts come up, they're not charged though. I don't project them, because I've been made aware of my tone, and whenever I'm made aware of my tone or my mannerisms by another human being, doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong, because I'm not an adaptive child part. I'm not trying to prove my ego. My ego doesn't give a shit about your ego, meaning I'm in the room with another ego. So of course we're going to have differences, and I have a twin. That's why with Robert Sapolsky's determined, no free will, I get it, because I have been determined. I can tell you from my childhood to my adulthood. And with attachment trauma education, how easy it is for a anchored in ventral energy person to be in their prefrontal, because that's how it works with thoughts and feelings. So neutrality and duality, very beautiful. Also mastering your mental, emotional, and physical plane as an Akashic record reader. It's amazing being able to bring to the human and the spiritual and the spirituality elements. So the sciences, subject matters, trying to get you to understand. Spirituality simplified. Be yourself. Restorative embodied. not the one that is a modulated embodied. No, restorative embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating, and you are integrating your brain. You don't have child parts that are still there with exiles or protectors. You have a higher self. So the solo, core, narrative, relational self, they're yours. You own the sense of self. Now we have integrity. Now we have a real man who will commit, and we have a real woman who won't suffer and be in a relationship out of pain. The people who instead are still living yesterday's news, and they are therefore adaptive child part people who are rigid in their form and all of it, you will see that they will be those men who don't commit and those women who suffer. And there you go. They have low self-esteem and they could use Terry Real to learn to love themselves first, but they won't. And that's why our 3D, 4D collective continues to prance around and be who they are going to be. The lower frequency of fear is what they're in. It's not a Lucifer and it's not a demon, but you better bet they continue to use those very ancient textbooks, divisiveness, and that's why we will know who they are and they will know who we are because the 5D collective is full of forgiveness, compassion, eustress, we talk, we expand, we look to the future with very much, it's different than yesterday's news. We didn't lose our integrity. We didn't lose what vows are. We didn't lose family or tradition. No, we are transforming as we speak. And what we know is that trauma carries on in the very shitty modalities of those who have their little hissy fits and want to be in their modulated embodiment and in their I'm going to be a charge. But the world is not black and white. The world is a rainbow of colors and there's gray. So when I'm meeting those who are like my facade friend, I learned how not to waste my time with clowns, and I learned, thanks to attachment trauma educators, how to leave it alone because their biologically rude ears are down. Okay, so a person is the only way into the state of compassion and allowing themselves to become all of who they want to be, can be, without the suffering, little lingering of this modulated embodiment existence that people instead on that other end of the coin are in, and that they continue to think of, again, men as having a hard time committing, women as having to nurture everything and be very sad to start anything new, and any stereotype and limited way of thinking really is a beyond me. So organizing concepts, awesome. Closing them up and being rigid in boxes, no, you don't have the capacity apparently to allow the gates of the waters to open up and to let it all come into melting pot and for you to still make sense of it in your brain, not my brain. So when someone, excuse me, you're confusing science, spirituality, I have a good time because I began as a teenager dealing with egos in a way of noticing this rigidity is unnecessary. We're having social time. I'm not proving a paper to you, and when I'm in academia I'm getting graded. There's a reason for it. Also, if I'm a researcher, there's a reason. Other than that, there's social time. So I'm not going to be in a hissy fit. And that's why the empowered person is discerning and equanimous. The good judgment is because I'm not with a charge. And if I have a charge, I'm no longer discerning. Now I have an emotional charge in the forefront, and what I want to do if I'm a truly discerning person is get myself to equanimity so that I can be calm and centered. Because I'm going to begin to talk shit as I continue to get upset due to the fact that the brain works a specific way when you are using your amygdala and when you're in alert. So people who like mindfulness practices, it's because we also like mindset skills, and that's because we also like mindset. That's because we don't whine about our thoughts or feelings or emotions like a Zen master, because we actively enjoy the mastery of the mental, emotion, physical plane. So to be yourself is this, at least here at IHP. Anybody else who wants to tell you that your adaptive child Paul self is you, go for it. And the ones who keep changing, well, that's because they consistently don't grow and become their whole self. When you have a whole self and your higher self is leading, it's a verb. Like Dr. Daniel Siegel shares throughout all of the courses I've taken and through my own personal way of embodying Maria, I don't feel changed because I don't lose parts of me. The empowered feminine is because you have a body and a heart, so the gut and the heart work together, and they work good because I know how love works, because I got to accept myself thanks to my mother with all my flaws. And that's the part, not being afraid of being rejected. So when you have no fear of rejection, no fear of exiles, no fear of any of that, you're not looking for a herd to point at you. You're a differentiated self. So I do me, you do you, and we're in good company. And that's exactly how it works. And that's with my facade friend included. So once I learned clowns will always be clowns, I will watch as you walk a walk and talk a talk. And I will watch when you skip and when you hop and when you ziggy zag. And then I will point out things as we converse and exchange, but I will also notice, do I have an adaptive child in front of me who is going to be like my facade friend, a liar, because I find it a liar when I'm with pause self people, because I'm dealing with an immature, insecure human being who basically switches their mind up based on the mood of the day. And then I got one day you got my back, the next day you don't, and so you just are unreliable, which is okay because nobody's living in the movie, so we don't really need people to have our back consistently. This is the one thing, a person who's there empowered, feminine and masculine, I don't need you to watch my back. I'll know if you have my back, and then I'll know that you will and you won't. Why? Well, if I come plug your nose, you're going to shoo me away. So my point is, every person is life serving in the essence, and none of us have chosen how our first 3 years of life will dictate. This is where Robert Sapolsky is important. How we will defend and protect. So if I'm in a physically dangerous situation, my body, Maria's body, might be a coward, considered coward from somebody else, because I'll run away. I won't hold it against myself because I know that physiologically speaking, that 3 years are implicit, and anybody who wants to hold it against themselves, they can keep on being an idiot because they don't like the explanation of, you don't have words, you don't have a way. You can unlearn, yes, that's the whole point. You can learn to work with your embodied brain. Now, when you don't unlearn your childhood trauma, we got shit that is still part of the equation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you being able to understand that your body has 5 ways of those defense mechanisms. It's fight, flight, freeze, flop, drop, attach, cry, collapse, submit. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so in the absence of any of the other stuff, because with development comes our relational field. And that's why it's very in depth, the journey of a person. But to bring us to close, point is, if I'm in a physically dangerous situation, I, Maria, will know that every person has a way that their body will have chosen, and I will not hold it against somebody that their body will have chosen to protect them, however it is. That's the data. So if I want a story, yeah, sure, I could add a story. I don't need a story. I have scientists to explain to me how the embodied brain works, so there's no story. It's a very simple mathematical equation. I don't need to like it or not like it, because I'm talking about the primary consciousness, which means it's survival instinct, which is why any person who doesn't like to hear something like that, you just want you want a side, you want to like or not like, go for it. I'm going to say I don't need a like or not like, because as the data tells, you're not going to choose. But I also don't need to say you're a selfish human being in a way of you're always going to be selfish and self-centered in this stingy. Okay, so this is where the conversations of people begin to take a lot of different turns. So my facade friend, for example, there was a moment where I needed him and he was not able to be there. I'm a grown up and I know exactly how the world works, meaning we all get busy with life. It's gray, it's rainbows. So me holding a grudge or being, oh my God, he didn't help me, that to me is childish. It's also unrealistic. It's also childish. Point is, when you're growing up and you see people who don't notice how they are continuing to be codependent in an emotional way on each other, you just think, okay, I mean, again, that's why it's a choice. How far you go with your own mindfulness practices and mindset skills and the inner growth mindset, and you becoming an empowered self. Because some people will not move into this sphere that I'm talking to about. To me, discernment and equanimity means that I can know that somebody might be having my back, somebody might not, and I won't be holding it against them because I don't have a story for you. Lucifer, evil, Knievel, medieval. No, I have data for you. And I actively know that my body, when I was in a situation, for example, moved backwards to try and ensure it would be able to get out of there. Others have frozen, while others who I thought would not even move because they're like a little thin toothpick were able to diffuse the situation. I'm not laughing because it's funny, but the point is we don't really want to be in these situations. So physical is what's actively something important. When I think of groups of people, when it's mental and emotional, you're either going to have people who know how to be their true self and then they allow room to have a good time, or you're going to have those who we get to see have fun on YouTube as they get all up and against each other and continue to do, let me tell you what to do and not to do. So if you tune into the extended, which like I said will be released throughout the week sometime, just look for it. It'll have the same title. Maybe I'll change one or two words, I don't know yet, but in the meantime, we'll talk more about this as we have some channel guidance, food for thought on being yourself in our lovely 5D collective, mystic, spiritual, mindful, living and loving way. And that's with the restored, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating people. It's great to be here. I hope you're having a great day. See you again soon.